For more than 5 decades, Gene Simmons has built a reputation as one of rock music's most recognizable personalities. Whether people know him as a fire-breathing, blood-spitting demon from Kiss or as a sharp businessman with an opinion on almost everything, one thing has remained constant. When Gene Simmons speaks, people listen. Lately, his name has once again been making headlines. Some stories focus on his latest business ventures. Others revisit Kiss's farewell tour, while many fans continue asking whether the legendary band is truly finished performing. Social media has only fueled the curiosity, with rumors spreading almost every week about possible reunions, new projects, and Simmons' next move. But behind the dramatic headlines lies a much more interesting story. It's the story of a musician who transformed himself into one of the most successful brands in entertainment history. Gene Simmons wasn't born into fame. He entered the world as Chaim Witz in Haifa, Israel, in 1949. His childhood was shaped by challenges that would influence him for the rest of his life. His mother, Florence Klein, was a survivor of the Holocaust, and Simmons has often spoken about how her resilience inspired his determination to succeed. When he was still a young boy, he and his mother immigrated to the United States in search of a better future. Life in New York wasn't glamorous. Money was limited, and Simmons quickly learned the importance of hard work. He took on small jobs while attending school and became fascinated by American culture. Comic books, television, and especially rock and roll captured his imagination. Then came a moment that changed everything. Watching the Beatles perform on television convinced Simmons that music could become more than just entertainment. It could become a career. Like countless young musicians during the 1960s, he picked up a guitar and began dreaming of life on stage. Those early years were filled with rejection. Bands formed. Bands broke apart. Opportunities came and disappeared. But Simmons refused to abandon the goal. Eventually, he crossed paths with guitarist Paul Stanley, another ambitious musician who shared the dream of creating a band unlike anything audiences had seen before. Together, they began building what would eventually become Kiss. From the beginning, Simmons understood something many musicians overlooked. Great songs mattered, but unforgettable presentation mattered too. Instead of appearing on stage as ordinary rock musicians, Kiss created larger-than-life characters inspired by comic books, horror films, and theatrical performances. Gene Simmons became the Demon. Paul Stanley became the Star Child. Each member developed a unique identity that audiences could instantly recognize. The makeup wasn't simply a costume. It became part of the band's identity. Concerts quickly evolved into massive theatrical productions filled with explosions, fire, smoke, elaborate lighting, and unforgettable stage effects. Simmons' famous fire-breathing and theatrical blood-spitting performances became iconic moments that separated Kiss from almost every other rock band of the era. Some critics dismissed the spectacle. Fans loved it. As album sales climbed throughout the 1970s, Kiss transformed from an ambitious rock band into a worldwide phenomenon. Children collected action figures. Teenagers covered their bedroom walls with posters. Fans proudly painted their faces to resemble their favorite band member. Simmons recognized something important. The band's popularity extended far beyond music. It had become a global brand. While many artists focused only on record sales and concert tickets, Simmons encouraged licensing opportunities that few rock musicians had seriously explored at the time. Lunchboxes, comic books, pinball machines, Halloween costumes, board games, clothing. Nearly every product imaginable eventually carried the Kiss logo. Some people laugh at the strategy. Years later, many admitted Simmons had seen the future long before others recognized the potential of entertainment merchandising. His business instinct became almost as famous as his music. Interviews often revealed someone who viewed success through both artistic and entrepreneurial lenses. He frequently reminded aspiring musicians that talent alone rarely guarantees a lasting career. Understanding business, he argued, mattered just as much. That philosophy helped Kiss survive enormous changes in the music industry. Disco arrived. Punk exploded. Heavy metal evolved. Grunge transformed rock music during the 1990s. Streaming eventually reshaped the entire industry. Yet through every era, Gene Simmons somehow remained part of the conversation. Some admired his confidence. Others considered him outspoken or controversial. Either way, ignoring him proved nearly impossible. Decades after painting his face for the first time, Simmons continued filling arenas around the world with audiences eager to witness one of rock's greatest live performances. Many musicians achieve success. Very few create a cultural phenomenon that lasts for generations. Gene Simmons managed to do both. Today, headlines continue appearing whenever he announces a new interview, comments on the future of rock music, or launches another business venture. But perhaps the biggest question fans continue asking isn't about the past. It's about what comes next. After Kiss completed what was promoted as its farewell tour, many wondered whether Gene Simmons was finally ready to step away from the spotlight, or was another unexpected chapter already beginning. As Kiss brought its farewell tour to a close, many fans found themselves asking the same question. Was this really the end? For decades, the band had announced reunions, celebrated anniversaries, and constantly reinvented itself. It wasn't difficult to understand why some people believed another surprise might still be waiting. Gene Simmons, however, continued explaining that ending the band's traditional touring career wasn't a decision made overnight. Years of performing in towering platform boots, elaborate costumes, and heavy makeup had taken a physical toll. Every Kiss concert demanded enormous energy. The costumes weighed far more than ordinary stage clothing. The boots added several inches of height while making movement considerably more difficult. On top of that came fire effects, pyrotechnics, elevated stage platforms, and performances lasting well over 2 hours. Simmons often pointed out that audiences deserved to see Kiss performing at its absolute best. He believed the band should leave the stage while it could still deliver the kind of spectacular concerts fans expected, rather than continuing until age or health prevented them from performing at that level. For many longtime supporters, that explanation made perfect sense. Instead of allowing the legacy to fade gradually, Kiss chose to celebrate it with one final worldwide tour. The farewell concert became emotional events. Fans traveled from different countries. Some had followed the band since the 1970s. Others were introducing their own children and grandchildren to Kiss for the very first time. The audience reflected something remarkable. Few rock bands remain relevant across 3 or even 4 generations. Kiss had somehow managed to connect with fans separated by decades. That kind of longevity doesn't happen by accident. It requires constant adaptation. Throughout his career, Gene Simmons embraced change rather than fearing it. When album sales declined across the music industry, he expanded into television. When streaming transformed how audiences discovered music, he spoke openly about the challenges artists face in owning a living. Although some musicians criticize the modern business model, Simmons frequently argued that artists needed to understand changing technology instead of resisting it. His comments often generated debate. Some fans agreed completely. Others believed rock music had simply evolved. Simmons rarely seemed concerned about universal approval. He has built much of his public image around speaking honestly, even when people disagree. That willingness to express controversial opinions has kept him in headlines for decades. Whether discussing the future of rock, the state of the music business, or financial success, Simmons rarely gives predictable answers. His direct style has become part of his identity. Outside music, his entrepreneurial interests continued expanding. Over the years, Simmons invested in numerous business opportunities, licensed products, appeared on reality television, authored books, and delivered motivational speeches centered on entrepreneurship and financial independence. To him, building a career never meant relying on a single source of income. Instead, he encouraged people to create multiple opportunities whenever possible. That mindset helped transform him into one of entertainment's most recognizable businessmen. Of course, not every business venture succeeded. Like any entrepreneur, Simmons experienced projects that generated enormous enthusiasm and others that quietly disappeared. He has often acknowledged that taking calculated risks inevitably means accepting occasional failure. The important lesson, he argues, is continuing to learn and move forward. Meanwhile, another topic frequently returned to the headlines. Would Kiss ever perform again? Although the band concluded its farewell tour, Simmons has consistently suggested that special appearances remain different from full-scale touring. A one-night celebration, a charity performance, or a unique anniversary event, those possibilities naturally fuel speculation among fans. At the same time, Kiss introduced an idea few people expected: digital avatars. Using advanced visual technology, the band announced plans for virtual performances featuring digital versions of its members. The concept immediately divided opinion. Some fans viewed it as an exciting glimpse into the future of live entertainment. Others questioned whether technology could ever replace the experience of seeing real musicians on stage. Simmons defended the idea by reminding audiences that innovation has always been part of KISS. From elaborate stage productions in the 1970s to modern visual effects decades later, the band consistently explored new ways to entertain audiences. To him, digital performances represented another evolution rather than an ending. The discussion highlighted something Gene Simmons has understood throughout his career. Entertainment constantly changes. Artists who refuse to adapt often disappear. Those willing to explore new possibilities frequently remain relevant much longer. Whether people agreed with every decision or not, Simmons continued demonstrating an unusual ability to anticipate where the industry might be heading. That talent extended beyond business. It shaped the entire history of KISS. From unforgettable makeup designs to one of the largest merchandising empires in rock history, many ideas that initially sounded unconventional eventually became enormously successful. Still, despite all the headlines about technology, business ventures, and farewell tours, the public remained fascinated by a much more personal question. Who is Gene Simmons away from the stage? Behind the towering boots, theatrical makeup, and larger-than-life confidence exists a man whose priorities have changed considerably over the years. And for many fans, that quieter side of Gene Simmons may be the most surprising chapter of his story. Away from the stadium lights and explosive stage shows, Gene Simmons has gradually revealed a side of himself that many casual fans rarely see. While his public image has long been built around confidence, business success, and outspoken opinions, those closest to him often describe someone whose priorities have evolved significantly over the years. Perhaps the biggest change has been his focus on family. For decades, Simmons was known as one of rock's most eligible bachelors. He openly admitted that marriage was never one of his goals during the height of KISS's success. His relentless touring schedule and dedication to building the band's global brand left little room for a traditional family life. Yet life is a way of changing even the strongest convictions. His long-term relationship with actress and television personality Shannon Tweed became one of the most talked-about partnerships in the entertainment industry. Together, they raised 2 children, Nick and Sophie Simmons, both of whom eventually pursued careers in entertainment while creating identities separate from their famous father. Fans gained a rare glimpse into their family life through the reality television series Gene Simmons' Family Jewels. Unlike the larger-than-life demon persona audiences knew from concert stages, the show introduced viewers to Gene Simmons as a father navigating everyday family situations. There were disagreements. There were humorous moments. There were honest conversations that revealed a man balancing business ambitions with personal responsibilities. The series surprised many viewers. Instead of seeing only the fearless rock icon, audiences discovered someone capable of laughing at himself, offering advice to his children, and occasionally admitting his own mistakes. It became one of the most successful reality programs centered on a rock musician. Years later, Simmons and Tweed finally married after decades together, proving that life doesn't always follow the plans we make in our younger years. That wedding attracted widespread media attention, not because it was filled with controversy, but because so many fans had followed their relationship for years. For Simmons, it represented another important milestone in a career already filled with unforgettable moments. Meanwhile, his relationship with fans continued evolving. Rather than slowing down after KISS's farewell tour, Simmons remained active through interviews, convention appearances, speaking engagements, and selective live performances with his solo band. These appearances often felt more personal than massive arena concerts. Without elaborate costumes or theatrical makeup, audiences experienced Gene Simmons as a storyteller. He shared memories from the early days of KISS. He discussed the challenges of building an international brand. He reflected on friendships, rivalries, successes, and disappointments accumulated over more than 50 years in the music business. Many younger musicians attended these events hoping to learn from someone who had survived nearly every transformation the entertainment industry had experienced. Simmons frequently emphasized one lesson above all others: hard work. He has consistently argued that talent opens doors, but discipline keeps them open. Whether speaking to entrepreneurs, students, or aspiring artists, his advice rarely changes. Prepare thoroughly. Keep learning. Never assume success is permanent. That philosophy has shaped his own career from the beginning. Another reason Simmons continues making headlines is his willingness to comment on broader cultural issues affecting music. He has often expressed concern about the future of rock as a dominant commercial genre. While some fans interpret those comments as criticism, Simmons usually frames them as observations about changing audience habits. Streaming services have transformed how music is discovered. Social media has shortened attention spans. The economics of touring have become increasingly challenging for many performers. In Simmons' view, young artists face a very different industry than the one Kiss entered during the early 1970s. Whether people agree with his conclusions or not, his perspective carries weight because it comes from someone who has witnessed those changes firsthand. Few musicians have remained active across so many different eras. From vinyl records to cassette tapes, from compact discs to digital downloads, from streaming platforms to social media, Gene Simmons has adapted repeatedly while remaining recognizable to audiences around the world. That adaptability may ultimately become one of his greatest achievements. Today's headlines continue focusing on every interview he gives because people understand that Simmons rarely delivers predictable answers. Sometimes his remarks generate praise. Sometimes they spark debate, but they almost always encourage conversation. Perhaps that has always been part of his success. Rock and roll has never been about blending quietly into the background. It's about creating moments people remember. Gene Simmons has spent more than half a century doing exactly that. And although Kiss may have ended its traditional touring career, Simmons himself shows little interest in slowing down. If anything, he appears determined to continue exploring new ideas, meeting fans, sharing stories, and proving that retirement doesn't necessarily mean disappearing from public life. For a man who has built a career by constantly reinventing himself, that may be the most fitting next chapter of all. Still, one final question remains. When history looks back on Gene Simmons decades from now, will he be remembered primarily as a rock star, a businessman, a cultural icon, or as someone who permanently changed the relationship between music, entertainment, and global branding? That answer may define his legacy for generations to come. As Gene Simmons entered his 70s, many people expected him to quietly enjoy the success he had spent decades building. After all, he had sold millions of records, performed before countless fans across the globe, and helped create one of the most recognizable brands in music history. Instead, he kept working. That decision surprised some observers, but made perfect sense to those who had followed his career. Simmons has often explained that he doesn't view work as a burden. To him, creating new opportunities, meeting fans, and developing fresh ideas are simply part of who he is. Even after Kiss concluded its farewell tour, his calendar remained remarkably full. He continued appearing at fan conventions where people travel from around the world just for the chance to meet him, hear stories from the early days of Kiss, and take photographs with one of rock's most recognizable figures. For many fans, those encounters became unforgettable experiences. Unlike the larger-than-life demon character seen on stage, these appearances revealed Gene Simmons the storyteller. He spoke about sleeping in cheap apartments before fame arrived. He remembered driving from city to city hoping that enough people would attend the next concert to keep the band alive. He laughed about early mistakes that, at the time, felt like disasters but eventually became valuable lessons. Those stories reminded audiences that success rarely happens overnight. Long before sold-out arenas and platinum albums, Kiss faced rejection from record labels, criticism from music journalists, and uncertainty about whether the band would survive. Simmons often points to those difficult years as a foundation of everything that followed. Without struggle, he believes, success loses much of its meaning. That philosophy also influences how he views business. Throughout countless interviews, Simmons has encouraged young entrepreneurs to understand the difference between owning money and creating lasting value. He argues that financial success is rarely accidental. It grows from preparation, discipline, and the willingness to take calculated risks. Some people embrace that advice. Others find his business-first perspective too blunt. Either way, his comments continue generating discussion. Another reason Gene Simmons remains in the headlines is his remarkable ability to stay connected with changing audiences. While many artists rely entirely on nostalgia, Simmons consistently looks toward the future. He has explored digital technology. He has embraced online media. He understands that younger generations discover entertainment differently than previous audiences. Rather than resisting those changes, he has often encouraged artists to learn how new platforms work. That attitude mirrors the same mindset that helped Kiss build an empire decades earlier. Innovation has always been part of the band's identity. Whether introducing elaborate stage effects in the 1970s or supporting new forms of digital entertainment today, Simmons rarely appears interested in standing still. Of course, remaining in the public eye for more than 50 years also means facing criticism. Gene Simmons has never been universally loved. His outspoken opinions have occasionally sparked controversy. Some musicians disagree with his views about the future of rock music. Others challenge his comments on business or the entertainment industry. Simmons has rarely tried to avoid those disagreements. Instead, he generally responds by encouraging open debate. He has repeatedly said that people don't have to agree with him. They simply need to think for themselves. That willingness to express unpopular opinions has become part of his public identity. For supporters, it reflects honesty. For critics, it sometimes appears confrontational. Regardless of perspective, it keeps his name in public conversation. Perhaps that explains why headlines about Gene Simmons continue appearing year after year. Sometimes they focus on a new interview. Sometimes they highlight another business venture. Sometimes they revisit the extraordinary legacy of Kiss. Behind each headline stands a man who understands something many celebrities eventually forget. Attention must be earned continuously. Yesterday's success doesn't guarantee tomorrow's relevance. That lesson has guided Simmons from the beginning of his career. It continues shaping his decisions today. As fans speculate about future appearances, possible collaborations, or unexpected announcements, one reality becomes increasingly clear. Gene Simmons may have closed one remarkable chapter by ending Kiss's touring career, but he has shown little interest in closing the book entirely. Instead, he continues writing new chapters in his own way, through business, public speaking, media appearances, and conversations with generations of fans eager to hear the stories behind one of rock's most extraordinary careers. And perhaps that is the biggest headline of all. Not that Gene Simmons continues making news, but that, after more than half a century in the spotlight, he still finds new ways to remain part of the conversation. The final chapter of his remarkable journey may still be unfolding, and it could ultimately become one of the most fascinating parts of his legacy. For all the headlines surrounding Gene Simmons, perhaps the most remarkable part of his story isn't the makeup, the sold-out concerts, or even the business empire he helped create. It's the fact that, after more than 50 years in the spotlight, he continues to evolve. Many performers spend their later years looking backward. Simmons has always preferred looking ahead. Even as the music industry changes faster than ever, he continues searching for new opportunities to connect with audiences. Whether through interviews, podcasts, fan conventions, business ventures, or special live appearances, he remains actively involved rather than simply celebrating past achievements. That mindset has earned him admiration far beyond the world of rock music. Entrepreneurs often cite Simmons as an example of someone who understood branding long before it became a popular business term. Musicians study how Kiss transformed from a successful band into an international entertainment company. Marketing experts frequently point to the group's licensing strategy as one of the most successful examples in modern music history. Gene Simmons has never apologized for treating music as both art and business. In his view, the two can work together. Creating memorable songs is important. Building a lasting career requires understanding contracts, intellectual property, merchandise, and long-term planning. That philosophy has influenced countless younger artists. Today, many performers launch clothing lines, beverages, cosmetics, and technology partnerships alongside their music careers. When Kiss embraced merchandising decades ago, many critics dismissed the idea. Now it has become standard practice throughout the entertainment industry. Simmons often reminds people that every successful brand begins with consistency. Fans should instantly recognize what an artist represents. For Kiss, that identity included unforgettable visuals, theatrical performances, and a commitment to giving audiences a spectacular live experience. That consistency helped the band remain relevant across generations. Another reason Gene Simmons continues making headlines is his willingness to engage directly with fans. Unlike many celebrities who limit public interaction, Simmons frequently attends fan events where conversations are personal rather than scripted. He answers questions about the early days of Kiss. He signs memorabilia. He shares stories about recording sessions, world tours, and the friendships that shaped his career. Many fans leave those events surprised by how approachable he can be. Behind